Your neighbors will kill you. I was just listening to my friend tell me that his city passed an ordinance saying that every car parked on the street must be moved at least 3 feet every 24 hours. The ordinance is absurd, of course, but I want to set the absurdity aspect of the ordinance aside for the moment. Right now, the entire world is under quarantine. Now, logically, the city would not enforce such an ordinance when everyone has to stay home. No one is going anywhere. However, this person's neighbor does not like the fact that his car is parked on the road in front of his house. So, guess what he does? Yep, you guessed it. Every single day, this pathetic person literally calls the police on his own neighbor just to have them drive out and see whether or not his car has moved 3 feet. Now, my friend thought, well, I'll just go to the next city council meeting and see if they can observe a bit of common sense while the quarantine's going on. But of course, the city doesn't give a crap about its residents and refuse to get involved. Therefore, my friend literally has to go to his car every morning, turn it on, roll forward three feet, just to do the opposite the very next day. Imagine now that my friend and his neighbor lived during a communist revolutionary time, or under some brutal dictator. The government is no longer the United States, but something more akin to the dictatorship under Ceausescu in Romania before the fall of communism. Rather than city council passing a ridiculous ordinance, the dictator or one of his bureaucrats decides all by himself that any car not moved within a certain amount of time will simply be taken away and given to someone in the Communist Party. Now, my friend, he doesn't like communism, but now he's forced to keep his mouth shut. His neighbor, oh, he loves using someone else to enforce his will. His motives are not to keep a nice community. No, his motives are to use power to destroy his enemies or anyone he doesn't like. And now he has a like-minded government with whom he is all too happy to please in order to get what he wants. And to make himself look good in the eyes of the party, he eagerly awaits any chance he can to get a chance to rat out anyone who's breaking the dictator's rules. So the neighbor waits till that one day when my friend accidentally sleeps in one morning and forgets to go move his car. The neighbor, just delirious that his chance has finally come, he's literally set his own alarm every morning just to check and see whether my friend has moved his car or not, even though it costs him an hour of sleep every morning, eagerly phones up the secret police to report my friend's disobedience to the dictator. Sure enough, the secret police come blazing in, break the window of his car, load it onto a tow truck, and take it away. At the same time, 10 armed party loyalists beat down the door of his house. Privacy isn't really a thing under such a government. And all of them at once begin to question my friend as the neighbor nearly wets himself from the excitement as he peers out his window next door. The questions begin. Do you like our dictator? Why do you hate the laws our dear leader gives us? Does your mother live down the street? Sure would be a shame if she had to suffer for your impudence, wouldn't it? Then they tie my friend to a chair as the senseless interrogation goes on for hours, and every answer just provokes more propaganda-charged interruptions from the interrogators. Eventually they beat him a bit with their backhands, but they think they finally made their point, so they untie him and return to their vehicles and storm away as quickly as they came. The other neighbors soon learn what happened to my friend as my friend's neighbor gossips about him just as fast as he can. They see his door broken down and are aghast at what they see when my friend sadly examines and then tries to fix his now broken down door, exposing his face to the world, consequently revealing the beating he just received. The other neighbors are now afraid to talk to my friend. If anyone sees them talking to him, anyone else might also accuse him also might accuse them of hating or disrespecting the party or the dear leaders simply by association. Very quickly, every neighbor cannot now trust his own neighbor. It digressed quickly. No one dares to speak even inside his own home, not even to members of his own family. No one says anything that even remotely sounds unhappy or negative because it can be twisted into a statement against the regime. Every stupid infraction, no matter how idiotic, ends up reported to the police. Those reporting them are doing so because they're frightened that if they don't report their friends, the police might accuse them of harboring the same views as do the accused friend or neighbor. Meanwhile, the evil SOBs who do report them, like the first neighbor, wind up in the party getting jobs and promotions and food, while anyone who keeps his own dignity even a little ends up jobless and pushed down in some bureaucratic social ranking system. In misery, my friend cannot even complain out loud about slowly starving to death. Now, this is not just a fictional story. It's a reality for millions and millions of real people, even today, in places like North Korea or Cuba. And millions of others have suffered under such regimes in the past. But what is it that makes a person so evil? Is it the fault of his government or society? No. I'm showing you that if my friend's neighbor simply behaved the same way that he does today in the United States of America, but instead lived in some more brutal regime-led country, he would quickly turn to his neighbors and beat them and have them tortured and imprisoned or worse. All around you right now are evil people. For many years I didn't understand that. After all, I was raised in a good home, and most of the people around me at least appeared to have my best interest in mind, and I believe that most of them did, but as I grew older, I began to see more and more the true nature of my countrymen. When I turned 16, I quickly obtained my driver's license and put it to use. On one of the first days I began driving, my driving behavior must have aggravated some old lady. I still to this day have no idea how this happened. But wouldn't you know it, this sweet, dear old granny rolled down her window, shot up a one-finger salute, and said some very vulgar things quite loudly. Honestly, I was really taken back. No one had ever actually done such a thing to me before, and it dawned on me that this woman's self-interest and personal ego was so big that the people around her meant very little to her. Even if my offense at the very worst might only have slowed her down a little bit. As I grew, I began to see the nature manifest itself more and more. A dorm resident in my Christian college I attended lied to me and got me to invest $250 in a pyramid scheme. I was very naive and new to the world. Never dawned on me that someone could just take my money, but he did, and at a Christian college. Another dorm mate asked me to drive him to a movie, lied about the movie he wanted to see, and talked me into seeing another movie just so he could see Cindy Crawford nude. I went back to the dorm and turned them and myself in. I was so full of guilt, even though I had no intention whatsoever of seeing that movie when I left. After witnessing from a plurality of students in the college a constant barrage of filthy language, lack of spirituality, and never-ending deceit and lies, it eventually dawned on me that no one else that I knew in the college had any pure motive whatsoever for being there, save one woman who had moved to America just after the fall of communism in Romania. By the way, it was because of her that I learned how communism really works at the local level, and is the reason I can give you this story. As the years progressed, I learned that murder happens all around me, that rape and pedophilia is ubiquitous, and that authority, by and large, has no desire whatsoever to help anyone. In fact, they often lead and direct many of the murders. The government that I had always thought of as carrying on at least some vestige of the ideals of the Founding Fathers are in fact leading the drug trade and using the CIA to cover for their crimes. In the case of Hugh Squire, the CIA went so far as to organize and plot the murder of his 4 wives and fiancées and controlled all the news both nationally and locally to prevent the news from ever coming to light. Even the local papers never so much as printed their obituaries. Think of that. And besides this, he exposed the CIA-led drug ring happening on his own property that was meant to set him up and get him arrested. 2 of the people who sold these drugs were named McVeigh and Nichols. Then, to cover for their own crimes, the CIA gave you the Oklahoma City bombing and used the same names, McVeigh and Nichols, as the names of the planners. Think how evil your own government is right now. Evil people don't exist only in the government. My friend, as we discussed, has one such evil neighbor. The first thing my neighbor did as she moved next door to me was to call the dog catcher and report that the dog in my yard, which I was actually just watching for my relative, was being abused. Now, my relatives had owned that dog for 18 years, and it was old, frail, and refused to eat much, so it was getting skinny despite the full bowls of food and water sitting there for it every day. But she didn't care to investigate the details. Dogs are much more important than people in her eyes, so if that means a human ends up with a fine or some sort of legal trouble, that's just fine by her. One of my many previous jobs was delivering bread for Nichols Bakery. As a delivery driver, you really get to know what people are really like. Anytime a vendor delivers to a store, he must find the store's receiver clerk and check in and count his product. Almost without fail, receivers are women, and I believe I know why. Women seem drawn to bureaucratic power. They love to exert authority over a man, especially when the man is rendered essentially powerless to resist because she knows he has to be nice to her because she represents the customer, and his job is on the line. Nearly all of these women were brutal, and they needed revenge on men because of the rejection they faced by men, undoubtedly because of their personalities, so they eagerly take it out on the vendors. One such receiver would slam the door shut right in the vendors' faces, leaving him in the pouring rain whenever she felt like going on a break. She would literally watch them unload massive amounts of product out of their trucks and onto their carts, drag right up to the door, and wham! Shut the door right while looking straight at them, and force them to wait in the pouring rain for 30 minutes while their product got soaked. The other women vendors were not much better. Every single one of them were very quick to report you to the company for anything whatsoever they perceived as the slightest infraction against them. More than willing, eager in fact, to see you fired and put on the street with your wife and kids because you dared to actually take care of your family, unlike the unfortunate fellow who got stuck with her. Bureaucratic force is feminine in nature, and women are drawn to it. Masculinity solves problems directly. It doesn't run to someone else to enforce its wishes. Every dictatorship, regardless of its brutality, is feminine in nature. It's this reason that men truly wish to be free and loathe bureaucracy, while women, on the other hand, relish in its glory and use it to control what they can't control naturally. In reality, women hate men and seek to dominate them. They resent the contradiction inside themselves that results from knowing they need a man to dominate them enough to set their insanity straight, while at the same time, that same insanity fights against them and bucks every move he makes to do just that. Meanwhile, they can't rationalize that men are drawn to them naturally while they hate them. And if he loves her too much, she quickly capitalizes on his weakness and seeks to destroy him. A woman receiver or a woman boss receives a fake love from the vendor or employer she controls, who in reality just wish like hell she'd fall off a bridge, but he can't say so or he'll lose his job. She's so relieved that she can hate him openly, and there's not a thing he can do about it. The insane side of the woman gets to win as she grows crazier and crazier. And the uglier and meaner she becomes, the more and more she is drawn to this power. It becomes like a drug to her. A male dictator draws on the feminine energy to control a nation. He depends on manipulation and fear rather than on competition and natural acceptance of his ideas and to further his own ends, like democracy. He always wants to force everyone to see him as some great person or bear the consequences of daring to speak his mind. He hangs his image all over town. Women are obsessed with their image. A male dictator is no different. Little dictators are all around you. Regardless of whether they are men or women, they pull from the feminine energy and seek to dominate. Burglars sneak in at night. They don't directly confront someone in the daytime and tell their victims up front they want their stuff and attempt to persuade them through intellectual conversation as to why they should give it to them. Anyone who doesn't know you but reports you to the city for a code violation, this person would kill you if the political situation was different. That relative who smiles to your face then calls you names behind your back, he'd kill you if he thought he could get away with it. What happens when you confront a dictator? Prepare to be destroyed. At the moment you call her out, she will use that power, and I say she because I'm referring to that feminine energy, whether it is present in a chick or a dude. Deep down inside, she already knows that you are right, and she already hates herself for what she's doing. If you touch that nerve, all that hatred will rise to the surface. I've had women receivers, yes, more than one, in fact, literally call the company and try to get me fired simply because I didn't, quote, appear respectful, unquote, to them, though I literally had not even spoken to them. That's how serious they take their delusions, and trust me, if she had secret police, make no mistake about it, they would storm into my house and command me and tie me to a chair and start shooting up their propaganda. And no, I'm not being facetious. And you know I'm telling you the truth. Homosexuals reek of the feminine energy. And make no mistake about it, many of them would cut your balls off and eat them in front of you while you hang upside down bleeding in front of them. That literally happened a couple months ago in Michigan. I'm not just saying this. It's for this reason that homosexuals feel compelled to force the world into accepting them. They don't persuade you. They don't offer you a service you want to buy and gain acceptance. No, they go straight to the lawyers and the politicians. And that energy is why real men feel nauseated in their presence and strongly compelled to just want to beat the crap out of them. But it almost never happens because they actually want you to do that so they can call the lawyers and play the victims. And most guys are smart enough to know this is what's going on, and so we just avoid them at all costs. You know, the only non-female who ever called in a complaint to the company about me was, guess what? A homosexual. Public smoking laws exist in this country because so many of your neighbors didn't give a crap if they poisoned your little kids in public places. And think how many millions of people are like that. You don't matter to them. Your wife and kids don't matter to them. You are literally worth less than that stupid little feeling they get from avoiding their own consciousnesses. And that's the reality of quite literally hundreds of millions of people. If they had half a chance, they'd sell you into slavery for life for a wooden nickel and never bat an eye. Why do you think that slavery ever existed in this country? People do not give a crap about you, that's why. There is no humanity, no compassion, no love. Nothing in a strong majority of people in the world. And that isn't just today. Slavery came to America in the early 1600s with those wonderful Christians, the Pilgrims. Despite all their writings about how much they loved God and how Providence protected them in the New World, etc., they couldn't even see the value of human life. And with that same inhumanity, millions of women murder their babies every year before they are even born. And make no mistake about it, a woman who would murder her own innocent unborn child would, with even less prohibition, slit your throat if she thought she could get away with it. After all, in her mind, you and every other man on earth caused her to do it. All around you are murderers just waiting for an opportunity to get away with it. For many, that opportunity never comes, so you tend to think that humanity is relatively tranquil. That's only an illusion. The moment the politics change or the society fails in some way, there they are, appearing as if somehow the politics or the political leader themselves had something to do with their creation. But that's not the case. They were always there. He just unleashed them. And they are present all around you right now, just waiting to be unleashed. After World War II, hundreds of thousands of men who had killed enemy soldiers returned from war, followed by hundreds of thousands more after the Korean and Vietnam Wars. Many of them, and we may never know how many, became hitmen for hire. That's why you could see someone just callously shoot dozens of people from a helicopter by the Mandalay on October 1st, 2017, on the day that Hugh Squire came to town. And these people right now are all around you today. and many more of them joined the CIA and are now running your drug trade. Many more join biker gangs and deal those same drugs and take out anyone who gets in their way. Sometimes people wonder why other countries are less violent than America. Perhaps it's at least partially because they haven't sent an entire population of their men in every single generation off to war to kill other humans. Soldiers think of themselves as masculine. What they fail to understand is the manipulative feminine energy behind the politicians that are controlling them. Soldiers always believe they are going off to fight evil and defend their families and nations. In reality, they are always fighting someone else's battle for reasons they will never know. Smedley Butler, after the First World War, said it best by the title of his book, War is a Racket. And after the racket has been exploited for all it's worth, the soldiers then return off into it to be exploited even further by becoming lethal enforcers for those who are running everything they once thought they went to war to fight against. In reality, it's a wonder that society doesn't fail altogether. Of course, history shows that sometimes it does. And all around you right now, as you hear my voice, they are there, waiting, eagerly hoping that it does. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.